Thank you so much. I work at a think tank, which means that this particular one tries to be a kind of interface between all levels of decision making, whether they are stakeholders or governments or politics. We have one mission, a lot of ambition for the future of this particular country. We try to be very positive, very driven, and making a difference. And these days, that means that I deal a lot with European issues, because obviously Europe has had to step in with all the dangers that the world is now presenting to us. And I was asked here for about 30 minutes to tell you what Europe is doing to put Europe first. In other words, to make Europe great again in this world where everybody else is trying to make everybody else great again. So very quick tour of the horizon, and I'm happy to take any other questions afterwards. There is a drink, or you can find me online or whatever. How do we make Europe great? How do we put Europe first? Is the macro perspective. Huh? You've understood that. It's really only about one thing. Is to make sure that we come out at the right end of the tunnel in Ukraine. Today that seems quite uncertain. And if we the Americans, allow Russia actually to win, that would mean a tremendous hit for Europe. It would mean a tremendous hit in terms of insecurity, instability, risks, geopolitical weakness, and it would create a fragmentation of the politics in Europe, because you would be split between two camps. The ones who, after the dust has settled in Ukraine, would say, now let's be realistic and normalize relations with Russia again. And the ones that would say, no, we have to keep up and be strong and stop Russia. So that is really the only thing that matters, to put Europe first, is to make sure that you come out the proper way. Now, how do we try to do that? The bottom line is that you have to do a few things at the same time. We will have to provide what is necessary for Ukraine to remain in the fight. Afterwards, to build up Ukraine. That reconstruction, I'm talking to business people, that reconstruction is one of the biggest economic opportunities of our lifetimes. I was in that region 2 weeks ago, talking with our ambassador, who explained to me which companies were already very much present in Ukraine, in which areas of Ukraine, and which governments were already, European governments, very much in Ukraine, looking forward to saying this is going to be the region where we will lead the reconstruction. So if you haven't thought of that, maybe that's something to think of, because there will be a lot of machineering to do in the reconstruction. So that's 2. 3, we will have to find some way to convince Trump to have our back. That means that we're going to have to pay the US. One way or the other. It's going to go through NATO. Very soon in June we'll have a summit that say not 2% of GDP to defense, but 3 or 3.5% of GDP to defense. And for Belgium, that is about an additional 10 billion expenditure every single year. 10 billion which we don't have, and there are ways to find them. Actually, my institute just published a paper this week, you can find it online, on how to do it. And in particular, which is the most important thing, how to spend that money wisely. Because if you do that wisely, it will create a return on investment, which is another industrial opportunity, a defense industrial opportunity, which is the next step for Europe. Huh? After you do Ukraine, after you pay US, you try to become self-reliant, autonomous, and for that you need to build up your own industry in all types of technology, because defense is security, and security is satellites, it's AI, it's steel production, it's whatever you want to call in that supply chain of security. That's what Europe has been doing. 1 week ago, there was a summit confirming that plan. You've heard that in the news. We were going to mobilize 800 billion euros to put into all kinds of ways to fund that. So that's the first thing that Europe is doing to put Europe first, is to try to stabilize Ukraine, and in the process, build up its own industrial, technological capacity related to defense and security, which in itself, if we do it right, is again one of the very biggest economic opportunities since the end of the Cold War, because it's building almost things that we don't have in Europe and building them up from scratch and creating European champions. So that's a big, big opportunity. Second thing, to put Europe first, is to make Europe bigger. You have a map. I don't know, you can't see it, but it's there. There's a map, and it's in the blue of the European Union. Now, I won't do any quizzes. I won't treat you like students, but it doesn't take a PhD in European Union affairs to understand that this is broader than the European Union. Because I can do some pointing, I think. This particular country here, that's Turkey. That's not the EU. This to the east of Turkey here is the Caspian Sea, and that's Azerbaijan. That's definitely not the EU. But the Caspian Sea does have oil and gas. This is the UK, that was the EU. It's still in the EU, apparently, because it's EU blue. You see Ukraine here, completely in blue. Even Crimea, completely in blue. What is this? Is this a dream, a fantasy from European politicians? It is actually called the European Political Community. You've never heard of it. Forget the name. What is it? It was made after the invasion of Ukraine to create a cluster of countries with one purpose. These countries are all going to be under a EU security umbrella. So that is the beginning of creating a geographic EU, which we've never done, to say, where do we need to be on the map? And this is our position on the map. That's geostrategic. Therefore, these countries need to be on our side. And how do we make them on our side? Well, you can bring them as members of the EU, but that's long and hard. But you can just make deals. And the deals are security, defense, infrastructure, economic opportunity. And we've made very long-term security deals already with Moldova, with Ukraine, in this format, which means that we're actually already partially welcoming these countries into the European Union proper. And you see the blue, which tells you that the UK, the UK is back. It's in blue and it's back. If you follow the news, you know that Mr. Starmer, the Prime Minister, together with President Macron, these are the two people leading the charge in security and defense. The UK is back. Brexit is over. Nobody votes on it, but it's the reality. So that's the second thing. Building a geography, building a security. And of course, if you say geography, you say borders. And you need to secure the borders. Securing the borders takes all kinds of things. It takes technology. There we go again. Communication. There we go again. Investment. Takes people, border patrols, and so on and so forth. It's a bit, well, for those of you who have a heart for Europe, European integration after the Second World War was done to get rid of borders. We wanted to be one community of nations, right, in Europe? And now the European Union is doing the opposite. European Union is now creating a fortress. It has one external border. It will protect that border. It makes deals with the countries on this slide. And it's one of the other reasons. It makes deals with these countries on migration. One of the reasons we want Turkey in is because Turkey stops the flow of refugees from the Middle East to Europe. It's not nice to have to make deals like that. And it makes you dependent on Turkey. We know that. We realize that this week because Mr. Erdogan knows that we need him. Therefore, he can behave like he is behaving. And we are shutting up. We are not saying anything. So that's the third part that Europe makes to put Europe first, is to have a federalization, almost like the United States. You say one territory, one border, and if you say a border, it needs to be defended, you also have to say it's one foreign policy about that border, which is pretty strong stuff if you have a sense of history, is that we are now living through the period, and it happens in a couple of years' time, without any big political debates and nobody is voting on it, that we are transferring, at least in part, defense and foreign policy to the EU. That's just happening. Now, is that going to work? Of course, that's the question. Obviously, we come from behind the curve. And if you remember what I said, first Ukraine, then NATO. NATO, we'll see that very soon, in June. There's a summit in The Hague. We will know. And then it's the build-up of Europe, and that's going to take you a decade to build that kind of backbone, industry, technology, intelligence, the headquarters to coordinate it, the R&D to fund it, the clusters of companies to have world standards. We will have to keep on doing that for quite a few years. So will that work? That's the big question. We do it now because we have a lot of pressure. We have to see what happens. Now the pressure, and that's for what we are doing to put Europe first, the pressure is the realization that Europe is facing 3 strategic adversaries at the same time. Of course, Russia, which is an enemy. The war in Ukraine is the war of Russia against Europe and the West. It's in the Ukraine, but it's not about Ukraine. 2, China is partner competitor, more competitor than partner, more danger than opportunity. And 3, since the re-election of Donald Trump, we realize that Mr. Trump values a normal relationship with Russia more than a good relationship with Europe. So that means we have 3 strategic adversaries at the same time. So how are we going to protect ourselves against that reality? That's 4, to put Europe first. What does that mean for people who are in business? You see behind me a number of economic sectors that all used to be part of a very nice thing called globalization. Free trade, free flow, transnational supply chains. We all love it. It was your life and my life for as the best part of our existence as grown-ups. And all of this, that's financial markets, the information space, energy markets, all of this was globalized. And how did we do globalization in Europe? We did it through the EU. The EU was really set up to do globalization within Europe and with the world. That was the purpose of the EU. Now globalization is over. We have these threats. Therefore, trade is no longer free. Trade is geopolitics. You can only do trade with countries that are part of dealing with the threat. That's the bottom line. Therefore, the EU, who was in the position to do all this globalization, is now doing deglobalization. What does that mean? It means that in all these sectors, the EU has said, everything that we consider to be of strategic importance for us, for our security, our autonomy, we require a minimum capacity of production in Europe. Otherwise, we are too vulnerable. 1. 2, we revisit all trade relationships. And we negotiate to see how can we make them geopolitical rather than commercial. Which is basically doing what China has done, by the way. China has always done trade as the flip side of politics and geopolitics. I invest in your country because I want to make a deal with your country. And that's the same what we are doing now. So that is the bread and butter of the sector federations in all these industries at the European level, because they're all involved in creating European autonomy and repositioning the supply chains. They're all involved in that, in various degrees. That was the first Commission von der Leyen, that slide. This is the second Commission von der Leyen. And you will see a number of things pop up. The slide is going to become very full, because the to-do list for the second Commission von der Leyen is just impossible to wrap your head around. Everything that I've said so far about Ukraine and defense and security and the foreign relations, and European autonomy, all that is already under the Commission. Migration, they all still have to do it. You decide it, then you have to implement it, then you have to realize it, then you have to enforce it. That's already all that. And on top of that, you have this slide, and I'm not going to go through this slide, but the bottom line is, there isn't a single sector in the economy that has some strategic significance. And for us, you can say steel, you can say chemical industry, you can say bio and life science, you can say ports, you can say airports. There isn't a single sector for which Europe now says we have to coordinate at the European level, put strategic goals in terms of what we need and how we're going to develop that capacity in Europe. So we are just continuing. At the same time, we want to mobilize private capital to make it happen. That's the Draghi report, if that rings a bell for some of you. Draghi, former Italian Prime Minister, former head of the European Central Bank, who wrote a big report saying if you want to do this, 800 billion euros a year, please. A year, please. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to integrate the capital market in Europe. So that's another thing on the to-do list. We have one capital market, therefore you have a huge pool of money, and that money is going to make a deal with the state. And we're going to say, that's where you're going to invest, and we will ensure you have a return on investment. That's the gamble that Europe wants to do. It's a big gamble, because Europe is not Washington, it's not Beijing, it can't command, can't direct, and Europe doesn't have any money. So it can't fund. It has to invent money, which is not impossible. We actually are quite creative in inventing money. So that is a big change. And this is a European Union that nobody ever conceived that the European Union would have to do this. And the European Union was done to do the opposite of this, to let it all go and create one big market and make the best company take the market share. That was the European Union. That's how it's set up. So with the same European Union, we're going to do the opposite. There are quite a bit of questions. I don't know how much time I have. Maybe I'll skip just to the end. I'll skip to the end. You can ask questions during the Q&A. So the bottom line, do we have to be positive or negative about Europe and the European Union? It's probably both. I'm the positive guy. I'm the voluntaristic guy. So I say we have done amazing stuff in a very short period of time. All of these things that I've mentioned to you, they were pretty inconceivable a few years ago. And it's gone very fast. The steps that Europe takes, we've never seen a faster progress. So if you like the history of European integration after World War II, we are all living in the period where integration goes faster than ever before, deeper than ever before. We are creating a kind of federal state at European level. But we are not doing it by the normal means. There is no government, there is no constitution, there isn't a budget that we decide and vote for. It just happens. And then we'll see, a few years down the line, whether we will formalize it. So there's a huge amount of things happening. It's overdrive for everybody who's involved in this. And of course, the pressure keeps piling up. And perhaps we have to be grateful to Mr. Trump to put us under pressure. But if you then have to do business, what is then the takeaway? And I'll leave you with that. What's the takeaway? To do business. First of all, you need to understand one thing. We are at war. And this is pretty existential. It's existential on the Russian side, it's existential for Ukraine, and it's existential for the European Union. So we are at war. So if you do a business, you have to do your risk about what are possible theaters of war, because there's Ukraine, and then there's Moldova, and then there are the Baltics, and then perhaps it's Romania, and then perhaps the Balkans, the Western Balkans. These are all possible dominoes if something bad happens. So, wartime. which means it's not normal, it's very unpredictable. Try to be part of the unpredictability, and you're probably in a better space than just subjecting yourself to it. 2, the European Union is deconstructing trade and supply chains and reconstructing it in Europe. Okay, so what in your industry does that mean? In what sector are you? What countries are you in? Where are your clients outside Europe? And how does that fit with that agenda? And does the re-globalization in Europe and the new trade deals that are geopolitical, for instance, India. I mentioned China and so on. India. A few weeks ago, the biggest delegation ever from the European Union went to India because we want to embrace India. And we want India at our side, so we have an alternative to China. Problem for Europe is that everybody embraces India. We'll see who marries India. I think India wants to marry everybody, but that's another thing. Anyway, so you have to look at how does my business position itself in that reconfiguration of trade inside the EU and between the EU and others. And between the EU and others means also assessing the risks. So if you're involved with China, the risk factor of being involved in China has gone up quite substantially, of course, both from a European perspective and from an American perspective. Nobody can predict what Mr. Trump does tomorrow, let alone 6 months or a year from now. But it might be that 6 months from now, he will say anybody who is producing in China can no longer sell in the US. Could be. No? So you really have to take into consideration what are the risks and where am I, what are the risks. Finally, my slide, full of sectors of industry that have manufacturing and machineering, full of them, full. So somehow you will be affected by the agenda to make Europe great again and to create more production capacity in Europe. If you can be part of the solution for that challenge, can you, by aligning yourself, by allying yourself with others, with other countries, can you create a value proposition to achieve these European targets? Then you're going to have a good business model that is both a good business model in terms of private sector clients and a good business model to get state subsidies. Subsidies domestically and subsidies from the EU. So thinking about that is also something you might want to consider. I hope I haven't spent too much time. I'll leave it here. I'm happy to discuss other things later.
Thank you, Professor De Vos. I can only state that Marc has a lot of passions. I learned that India is with everybody, is in love with everybody, but you are certainly in love with Europe, you're optimistic, and I think it's a good way to start this debate. Good evening, by the way, for the people who just arrived. We are very happy to have you here in this machineering manufacturing scenery all around in Paleis 9, Paleis 8 and Pasio. But so let's get started with a short introduction of our magnificent 5. Professor De Vos, you already did your due diligence and your duties during this keynote, and I suppose everybody knows now who is Marc De Vos. We will remember you afterwards and ask you questions in the questions and answers in the networking drink. But nobody does it better than the people in the panel themselves to present themselves in a, let's say, 30-second pitch as a starter. So maybe we could start with Tim from Agnlo Belgian Corporation. Tim, it's your 30 seconds.
Hello everybody, my name is Tim Berckmoes. I'm the CEO of ABC Engines. We are a group of about 20 companies, mainly in Europe. We produce diesel engines, but also engines running on methanol, engines on hydrogen. We have 3 foundries in Europe. We also have a turbocharger company, and we have a company in Switzerland for after-treatment systems. We are about 2,200 people, turnover of about 500 million euro. 85% of the components we produce in the group, and 90% is export. And I have the honor to be president of Agoria Flanders, which is the federation of the technology, manufacturing, and also digital sector.
Perfect. Tim, I have maybe two additional questions. I heard that you are very convinced that the European industry must be technology neutral, which I suppose you mean is that all possible sources of energy, including nuclear and hydrogen, are on this list. So tell me, why does a kilogram of hydrogen nowadays costs 15 euro? 15 euro, that is 5 times the cost of diesel. Am I correct? Any forecast on the future of hydrogen in your sector?
Well, it's a good example. Yes, the pure cost of hydrogen today is about 15 euro per kilo. It's quite easy. If you have 1 megawatt hour, 1000 kilowatt hour, you can produce with electrolysis 17 kilo of hydrogen. So suppose you have an energy invoice of 170 euro per megawatt hour, you divide by 17, this means 10 euro per kilo is your energy cost. And then of course you have the logistical cost, some margin for the suppliers and so on. So if our energy strategy in Europe is not changing, there will be not a great future for hydrogen in Europe. So that's why we say you need all energy, all technological solutions to make this energy transition. You will need fuel cells, but you will need combustion engines. You will need nuclear power. France today is investing in new nuclear power, not only SMR. SMR is in 10 years, not today. And with nuclear power, you can bring down the cost of hydrogen to 3 euro per kilo. And then it's very cost competitive. So what we need in the industry is competitiveness. We need lower energy costs. Also, the wages are linked to the energy cost. 50% of our inflation, of the indexation of our wages, is energy cost. So if we don't have a better strategy on European energy, then we will not make this transition.
Okay. A last question for you, because you were talking about the Draghi report, the famous Draghi report. Some people know it, some people do not know it. But I heard on Canal Z that you actually said if you want to get a permit in Belgium, you need more than 1,000 pages. According to the Draghi report, that should change drastically. The duration of the demand for a permitting process should be speeding up. Any thoughts on how things are actually happening today?
Well, I think the newspapers are full of good intentions of Europe. We read a lot of things. But if you see the reality, it will come into force at European level mid of 26. We are March 25. And then it should come in local legislation, in federal legislation. In average, this has taken another 2 years. So all these people in the audience who work every day, their machines work 24 hours. They will see the results in new legislation mid of 28. The process is much too slow. The process is much too slow. So we need to reduce complexity. We need to bring down the people back to earth. And today, in fact, yes, if you want a new exploitation permit, you need about 1,000 pages. Of course, there is a small error in 1,000 pages. There's always an error in 1,000 pages. And then you get, of course, the public sector who wants to react against some of these minor non-compliances. This is not the way we should go forward. We need simple procedures, accessible to be written by normal people. I'm a civil engineer. I have 3 civil engineers in my team. They cannot even demand a European subvention anymore. It is too complex. The only thing that is work is VLAIO. The VLAIO subvention program is quite accessible. The European bureaucracy has created too much complexity. We have been over the limit. We have too much over-regulation. So we need to come back to earth and make things much more simple, decide much more quickly, and bring it to application now and not in 3 years.
Okay, bureaucracy. We'll keep this one for the last part of this 5-part debate. You will see what is the logic behind. But Stijn van Esten, it's your time for your pitch. 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. So indeed, Stijn van Esten, I'm the COO of Stow Group. Stow Group is a racking company, 1 billion company, headquartered here in Belgium, south of Kortrijk. We build warehouses and also automated warehouses. That's through Movo, our automation daughter, and you may know it because we are housed in the building where the persgroep used to print Het Laatste Nieuws along the E17. A very fast-growing daughter. Before joining Stow in 2022, I worked 27 years for M.E.G.A. So in fact, Stow is my second employer. I have a technical background. I spent 5 years in China also for M.E.G.A. And the last 6 years I was a member of the management board leading Steelwire Solutions, a 2 billion division of M.E.G.A. So I have a history, let's say, in manufacturing and more particularly steel processing manufacturing.
Okay, Stijn. Now, if I got it right, you are not only COO of Stow, but you're also active in the supervisory board of Movo,
Right.
which is more I think, the robotics side of the story. I suppose both companies are compatible in some ways in the same space, but would you like for the public give some more details about the Stow movie story? How do you...
Right. So historically, Stow is a racking company. It's very static. You build racks and steel structures to put pallets or bins in. And Stow realized that the future of warehousing is automation. Yeah? Why is that? Because racks go higher and higher as square meters of land become more expensive and more scarce. And of course, as you go higher, you cannot operate such warehouses manually. You need automation. On top of that, labor costs are going up, and less people are willing to work in a warehouse. It's not the most exciting job. Another reason why automation is the future for warehouses. And Stow decided not to be just a supplying partner for automation companies, just provide the racking, but do the automation ourselves. We founded Stow Robotics back in 2021, renamed it Movo Robotics, basically grew from 0 to almost 200 million euro turnover last year. So it's a very fast-growing business here in Europe. And it's very different. So to come back to your question, Stow and Movo are very complementary. You cannot just do an automation on a rack. You need to integrate the automation part and the racking part. The tolerances on your rack need to be much more tight because you have moving vehicles inside the rack with heavy weights, pallets of 1,500 kilo or more on the back of these robots. So it's really a complementary business. Has not been easy for Stow because from metal manufacturing to software, control systems, mechatronic, moving vehicles, you sell a machine. You're not selling just a static rack. And we're the only one, proud to say, in the racking industry that has pulled this off. All others are either making racks or are separate automation companies.
It's quite a compelling story, which means that, in fact, while you launched Movo Robotics, Stow, as a company, had to change
the DNA, in fact.
business case and its DNA to adapt to Movo.
Instead of blue-collar metal workers, we now have software engineers.
The software engineers, you're a real tech company.
Indeed.
Speaking about tech companies, Stéphane, it's your turn.
Yeah, so my name is Stéphane Burton. I'm the CEO of a group called Orizio. We are active in aerospace. We operate 300 million euros of revenue around 2 types of activities. Design and manufacturing aerospace, and the name of the company is M.E.G.A. And then in the maintenance, sustainment of everything that flies, from large aircraft flight, drones and helicopters. And the name is Sabina Engineering.
Okay. Can you just tell me, are we talking about aerospace and defense?
Yes. So in defense, so the market that we are addressing with this capability, aerospace is busy in dual use since its birth. For example, when you look at the company M.E.G.A, that actually was the mother company of Sabina 100 years ago, it was created by a former pilot from the World War I Air Forces of Belgium. and that created the first company to build aircraft and another one to operate aircraft.
Okay.
So these dual-use things is a 100 years, and in time of wars, as relating to what Professor Marc de Vos said earlier.
Okay, all right. Of course, Geert, you were the last one.
All right, thank you. So my name is Geert Stienen. I'm a partner within Deloitte, the biggest management consulting firm globally. I lead in Belgium the turnaround, restructuring and performance improvement activities. Prior to Deloitte, I'm working almost 28 years, and about 70% of that I spent in the industry as a CXO. Actually, before I joined Deloitte, I was the CEO of Agidens, previously known as Egemin, an industrial automation company where I spent 13 years.
We know Agidens very well. Geert, if I got it right, you are fixing problems in companies in distress, companies who underperform, or who are confronted with Europe is at war, or who are confronted with strategic or operational challenges. I guess if we talk about the challenges we are debating here, it is the last category we are debating here of companies who have to make, people who are here are looking for what strategical changes. Do you have many companies calling you for issues like we are discussing now today?
Actually, we do. So you see an enormous pickup in questions, and I would say they can be categorized in two categories. First is due to, and you've mentioned, of course, a lot of them, rising costs, energy costs that go up, the geopolitical upheaval that there is there, productivity is going down, etc. So companies are confronted with either getting in really bad shape, or they see like, okay, we're still in a good shape, but our performance is going down, so we would like to do something about it. And that is one of the things, if you can call it the big transformation. It's not business as usual. It's not a core business for a company to do that. That is the biggest category at the moment, and like I said, you see a serious pickup in those activities. On the other hand, you also have still companies that are quite strong in their performance, but perhaps a bit under the motto of never waste a good crisis. They say, okay, let's get even sharper, that when we get through this, it's a bit survival of the fittest. We are the most ready to enjoy the economic uptake that will take place. It's both categories. So bulk is more in the first, of course, but there's serious.
So companies who have a good excuse now for getting lean.
Yeah, I don't like to call it an excuse because then it sounds like a ruse.
An excuse, yeah.
They take the say, okay, let's be proactive. We're still doing quite good. Let's even get better in shape.
Got it. So these people are my magnificent five. We have two experts. At the other side, we have three CEOs. That was the setup we wanted to do because those people are all CEOs of companies who are global players. And these people have expertise in insights and consulting for people like you, So this is the story we are bringing, and this is the logic in the questions or the themes that we are going to bring. Now, the first theme that is appearing, I hope, on your screen, not directly on our screen, but I make it a little bit more simpler. You have the possibility to read. We do not have the possibility to read. But it is all about the issue deglobalization. Professor Marc de Vos had his talk around it. What's happening? Global, local, what's happening? Let's keep in mind that the headlines of this slide is deglobalization, rebalancing rather than retreat. Are we just rebalancing in the situation, or do we have a drastic retreat? You can also read that they say there is a sector-specific impact, that for probably sectors like automotive and technology, business to business, that it is more something like, yes, we keep global, we focus on global things. Maybe for business to consumer, it's more like acting locally, nearshoring. In your opinion, and is this a question for one of you guys. In your opinion, are we talking about rather about rebalancing than a full retreat in your business nowadays? And moreover, do you think in your industry, which is, I suppose, also business to business, will you continue to focus on that global approach?
Maybe I can answer. For sure, for us it's rebalancing. I mean, to give the example, the US, we all know the duties that have been installed by the Trump administration, even more so last night with automotive. We pay 25% duties now on the racks that we import into the US. However, the steel price in the US also increased dramatically, so in fact it doesn't matter all that much. But of course we are looking at our footprint. Last week we announced a manufacturing plant in the US that we want to build. That was already the plan. So we are rebalancing, we are adjusting our strategy, we want to be flexible, but for sure there is no question of retreat. It's Darwinism, it's survival of the fittest, you have to adjust or you perish, and we will adjust.
But you have to rebalance every day then?
Yes, yes, and have a strategy that allows you to balance without spending too much money, because I think that's the big question. The cost of all these things is going up. I mean, all these anti-trade actions are increasing the cost of doing business. You may not be able to work with the best supplier you want to choose because he's in a country or you have to pay duties. And you may need more plants so that you have a more flexible footprint. In any case, for economy and for businesses, it is bad. You have to adjust, but it always means higher costs.
Is this an issue as an expert in which people are asking you for consultancy? If they want to get it more balanced, and how they are having a scenario to get it more balanced every day, because everything changes. Today it was a 25% tariff on extra tariff on cars, if I recall. So every day is changing. What do you advise your?
Yeah, we're talking about globalization, deglobalization, but whether you're talking about that or you talk about supply chain or something else, the uncertainty is a bit here to stay. I mean, there used to be the saying, the only certainty in life are death and taxes. I think it should be death, taxes and uncertainty, at least for the next decade. What is happening there is indeed a lot of people are rebalancing, but are looking at the different options that are there. So what they're doing is they are actually doing a lot more scenario planning than before, and with the scenario planning, stress testing the hell out of the different scenarios, and not just once, but do it frequently on 6 months or an annual basis. Because things are moving and happening so fast that you cannot be complacent and say, okay, well, we have 3 or 4 scenarios, you know, the optimistic, the pessimistic. Now, these scenarios go much more deeper, and you need to stress test them, and then, of course, have the agility to, whenever something happens, okay, you need to act accordingly. And what does it mean for my business?
Okay, so in your case, for example, 6 months.
Yeah, the thing is that in manufacturing, it's like it's the first time that you're facing such a big change. We have a business where we are in manufacturing and servicing. In servicing, agility is a key. Yeah. So in reality, no, manufacturing, and I know it because in my company, the manufacturing division of us has difficulty to adapt to it. Mm-hmm. The service just adapt like this. The last 5 years, we have had 3 big crises. We have had actually these COVID crisis, then we have had this war, then we have these inflation prices, and if I'm looking my last 20 years of being manager of this company, I have it even as the crisis 2008, 2009, then 2011. So we have constantly in crisis. So in reality, adapting to change is what you do as businessman, because if not, you need administration. So now the question is here, what is difficult is manufacturing requires more long-term vision and more stability. So in reality, the difficulty from a theoretical point of view is to build enough stability with a bit of agility in your model. So I think it's standard deviation you're working on. And that's why I think we readapt our model in manufacturing by revisiting our make or buy. So the make, we used to have in Europe a lot of buy. We would purchase a lot from production in China, a lot from production in low-cost countries. So now we need to rebalance it. When you look at guys like in Airbus, now they're saying you should produce more in Europe so that we have double sourcing. So single sourcing is a change of a business model. And that's where reindustrialization is one of the steps you take. But to the other end, you're also pragmatic and you say maybe someone yesterday was not a partner, today can be a partner, like Morocco. I mean, a few months back, we said Morocco bad guys. Today, when you look at Airbus projection, they say Morocco is part of Europe. So you were talking about EU policy and geography. In reality, the north of Africa becomes Europe. So I think that the make or buy policy is changing. So we need to invest in a different way to keep our make and not to be dependent. but accept some agility. So as you said in the US, we still have to procure some part from the US. And yes, this country, they are made of businessmen, so they will sell to us. But we cannot be dependent on them, because if they change too fast, then you cannot reflect the price to your customers. So that's where a bit of agility with stability, but adapting is one thing.
Yeah, that brings us to that second slide, because we are, in fact, it's logical. We are speaking here about supply chain management, supply chain strategy, nearshoring, as you see, I suppose, in the slide above. But we are already on the right, hitting the right target. One of our great worries, according to PwC, PwC inquiry, when we're talking about risk management in the supply chain, are restrictions on access to critical materials, trade route disruptions, sudden changes in tariffs and duties. As you can see on that slide, it's all about risk management and opting for hybrid approaches. I think that rebalancing and that hybrid is a little bit the same story. Do you personally go for these advices, or do you have other thoughts on that we are evaluating versus those, definitely versus those hybrid approaches?
As I'm left to you, I will tend to answer every question.
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
I'm
I can answer from my side. I think we need double sourcing. You need, or maybe triple sourcing for critical parts. We need to have a solution in Europe, but maybe also outside Europe. So we need hybrid models. I think as a CEO of a company, you need to have a strategy to make the company robust. It should survive many crises. And you need to be diversified in supply chain, but also diversified in clients, diversified in sectors, diversified in regions. And then you can, let's say, continue business even if one of the aspects is in crisis modus. I just want to give the example of our foundries. Foundry business is a hard business. If we have a 2% EBITDA at the end of the year, we are very happy.
That's
with
very small.
2% EBITDA. Huh? Then we drink water with CO2, not champagne. And we sell in US. We sell casting parts to John Deere, for example. And why is John Deere buying in our foundry in Germany? Because we are automized. We have a very good supply chain performance. Our cost is still competitive, even with German energy cost. So there are still opportunities. We also supply from our Swiss company after-treatment systems for combustion engines for data centers. We are one of the only companies who can make the ultra-low NOx for data centers. The technology does not exist in US. So there is still opportunities to sell even to US. And even Volvo Trucks, the CEO of Volvo Trucks, decided to build a new factory, brand new, in Mexico. I told to him, whoa, now you are in big difficulty. He said, no, I'm not in difficulty. This scenario was foreseen because all my competitors are also in Mexico. So it's not a catastrophe. So let's please keep confident and go from our strengths in Europe. We still have good chances worldwide.
Okay. Now, in your case, I suppose you get in contact with companies who ask for scenarios also, or how do you anchor your positivism to these issues? Rebalancing, hybrid approach, scenario planning?
I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach. I do think you have to do your homework and do some variations on what could be a possible scenario. Many of the things that I wanted to say have been said, so I won't repeat them. Mm-hmm. For me, it's look, supply chain is definitely something to dig deeper in. If you're reliant, that's perhaps something I would want to add. If you're reliant on suppliers, mm-hmm. you also have to understand how reliable the supplier is. Because at the end of the day, it's also about commodities and resources and so on. And there might be risks actually to your business model that you have to understand and have to do with your supply chain. So you have to drill deeper, not just your own company. That's perhaps one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is do you have worst case scenario planning? Because this could get worse. So you could do some scenario planning. What happens if there is a domino effect in Europe? What could then be scenarios? Another thing is we talked about services. Right? It's not excluded that we will have deglobalization in services. It's not excluded. Certainly in the digital space, we will see a deglobalization.
Explain me deglobalization in services. Do you have an example?
Well, it's mostly in information technology, platforms, data sovereignty, what is considered to be security related or not, and these type of things.
Okay.
So many businesses would surprise me if you're not dependent on the cloud. But that dependence is problematic. And so there will be a next wave. We are now dealing with deglobalization mostly in production and supply chains and commodities and so on. There will be a next wave which is triggered by data and communication. And that will mean that reliance on the big American, the real magnificent seven, relying on them and on their cloud and so on and so forth, that is no longer going to be a viable scenario, certainly for some sectors. So that is also around the corner to think of. Another one, if you want the darkest possible scenario, which is not far-fetched because you read about it and this is something that has been going around for quite a while, is that Trump's really big move in America First would be to introduce tariffs on the use of dollar, the use of the dollar. So basically monetizing the role of the dollar as the global reserve currency for American resources. So basically financial globalization could be next as well. So thinking about that, about which currencies you use and so on, and these type of risks is also something to bear in mind if you are in that ballpark, if that is a relevant thing, particularly in an international supply chain and so on and so forth. So these type of scenario, I don't want to make it even more complicated than it is.
I get it.
I'm trying to look further down than
why not?
The business cycles and so on and so forth.
Of course,
so
because now
Trump will need a lot of money. There is no doubt about that. That his the short-term effect of what he's doing, if he's going to stick to it, is that it's going to hurt the American consumer. It's going to hurt the American economy, exporters, and it's going to create domestic inflation. So if he wants to stick the course, he will need to generate a lot of resources to compensate. How are you going to generate resources? Are you going to say tariffs? But if tariffs work, then you don't get resources, right? Because the tariffs are there to keep your competitors out. If they don't come, you don't have tariffs. So you will need to raise money. And they're basically, the scenarios that I hear is two scenarios. One is put a lot of assets of the American government in a sovereign wealth fund. So the American government owns plenty of assets, put that in a sovereign wealth fund.
Like the Norwegian.
Yeah, but not oil, other assets.
Other assets.
Put it in and monetize it, and you have a big sovereign wealth fund, and you can distribute it. And the second that I see and hear about is about monetizing the role of the dollar and creating revenue.
Not the stable coin and not the Bitcoin, because that's a total other story.
Yeah.
But finally, we're ending up in the third part of the story here, of this debate. We had nearshoring, we had supply chain. But you have the geopolitical risk, and that's a big room of uncertainties hanging as a clouds above us in that red ocean. So, as you are not reading the slides, but you are reading the slides, it's obvious that the new normal will never be normal again. That's for sure. There are daily changing landscapes and disputes. There are new trade blocks like as you were talking about, like the BRICS and the One Belt, One Road, the unwokening countries as Argentina, who have new strategies. As an investor, a manufacturer, how can you keep on predicting, preparing, planning? Steen, any ideas?
I think we've already mentioned flexibility in supply chain and manufacturing, but I'd like to build on what Tim said earlier. I think we should also start from our own strengths. I mean, if I once had a boss that said the winner of the future is the company that has the best team, the lowest cost, and the best products. And I think that is true in any kind of world. So duties, I mean, if I look at automated warehousing, for instance, the champions are all European. And duties will not change that, or it will take a very long time. And in fact, the level playing field is still there. Despite the duties, the cost has gone up. And of course, it means maybe some less projects will get justified and pay back. But
Sorry,
overall,
help me further in this.
Yeah.
The major players are all European companies.
Knap, Exotech, Movo now, our own company. In fact, Dematic is there as well, but I can make the list. The top 10 are all European.
But they all deliver also in the US.
They all deliver in the US.
Swisslog, Schaefer.
Yeah, it's all US. All European companies. And so that means we're the only ones that have the manufacturing capabilities to build huge structures like racking, but with the accuracy that you need, the tolerances that you need to run automated systems in those. I mean, these big cranes, you need very accurate racking. Shuttles, you need very accurate racking. Europeans are able to do that. We have a huge talent base with technical people. We have a huge network of suppliers and universities. I think we should not underestimate the strengths we have in Europe. And of course, if the Trump administration or other countries go the extreme way and block you completely, okay, you're out of the game. But forgetting about that and assuming it's just tariffs, I'm convinced that we are able to master that, not just by flexible footprints and flexible supply chains and all of that, yes, but also by having superior products. I think that's really important.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that you should make a difference between the market that will shrink because you no longer have access to the market, which is a problem, and the market will be more difficult because you have a price issue. So the price, the willingness to pay is playing along the side of the value added by the product you sell. And as you say, when you have a good product, even if the price is increasing, if there is no better and competitive product, you might still sell. Mm-hmm. But I think there is also a reduction of the market because of the access to the market. And that's where you might, I'm also the chairman of the Belgian industry for defense. And I'm contacted for the last 6 months by many manufacturing companies that are coming to me and say, do you know an application where my industrial asset could be used? Because there's another strategy in business management school that we learn, which is sweat the assets. And I think a way to adapt is also to say, there's a part that will still fight, as you say, because we shouldn't lose our capabilities. But when we see we don't have enough volume, which is important for the return on the industrial capex, then we should see, can we use this technology on defense, because anyway we're going to have to spend on money on defense. And as Marc has said, that's what we have. I'm drafting notes to the different minister of defense for the last 10 years, but it's only the last 2 years that they're listening, to say if you spend on Belgium industry and you have returns, it's actually cheaper than when you just purchase on the shelf. And I think sweating the industrial capability, that's what we call dual use. And now that, to be transparent, Flanders has also reopened to defense, which is a big change. This is a 30 years change in the possibility to address it. And I know many names, 1 billion euros company in Flanders that are now talking to me and saying, what could we do? So I think that as European, we should see this risk as an opportunity to maybe utilize our capabilities into defense application, that there will be a time that the dust will come to the ground. There will be a time that even this president that they have in the US, he will also have a replacement, or we'll have a change of governance. But if we have, then we have actually created a new market segments which made that we might even be stronger after the crisis. I think that's also a way to look at the risk. It's also always an opportunity.
Yeah, if I remember, but you could be more of a service to say that. I can imagine when there was the Cold War and everybody was mentally in a state of war, there was some kind like a war industry without having a war. Am I too shrewd if I say that having a war without having a war is boosting an economy anyway? For those who play with it, in it?
Look, there's always going to be a war economy, and in a conflict generates winners and new opportunities. But there's one huge difference between the phase that we are now entering and the Cold War that you referred to. That in the Cold War there was a complete economic separation. And now we come from a status quo of economic integration and interdependence and globalization. And so we are interconnected with China, and we were energy-wise dependent on Russia, and we know what that means for our industry when you say energy costs and so on. But there is no quick fix for the energy cost. The only quick fix is buying Russian gas again. And it might come to that, no? If Russia wins. You will have political pressure to normalize relationships and buy Russian gas again. So that is the hard thing to do in this transition period. Huh? So yes, the new conflict reality, that was the purpose of my talk, will generate a lot of new investment opportunities and market opportunities. And there is also going to be not globalization, but re-internationalization. You are going to see new countries clustering together because they have new shared interests. I mentioned India. You can think about Canada vis-à-vis Europe. You could look at Australia and New Zealand from a European perspective as very reliable and potentially interested in deepening relationships with our part of the world. So yeah, that is the way to go. If you're just looking at Europe, well, if you go to the east part of Europe, these are the countries that you know for the foreseeable future, they will be investing very heavily in everything to do with autonomy and security, for sure. So if you have a business model that somehow connects to that, you need to be there. That's why I mentioned the reconstruction in Ukraine, and so on and so forth. So yes, there are opportunities.
Yeah, there are several movements, as the slide above here on tariffs. The only question people ask, dogs keep barking, gorillas keep pounding the chest. Once tariffs are tweeted the other day, they are backing up or softening. Today it was 25% tariffs on cars. But some people say tariffs, maybe they work for Trump or the policy. Last week, if I remember, because we are not already April the 2nd, where he is going to tell maybe a complete other story and what's more definitive. But Hyundai last week, I think, was the poster child in the White House with President Trump. All the CEOs and big guys from Hyundai were there, and they are announcing a first $5 billion investment in the US for producing cars. So they all get the felicitations of the POTUS. I wonder how can companies nowadays, if they see that, prepare an investment outlook as a company. Where are we going to invest? Are we going definitely, is Stow, or you are already in the US, but is Stow saying, oh yeah, we are going more to the US because it is inevitable?
Yes, but the main reason is not the duties. In fact, I was already in the US in 2023 to look for a location. We then put it on the back burner because all our cash went to Movu and recruiting those software engineers and so on. But we announced last week in Promat, the big logistic fair, that we will build a plant in the US. We want to be operational by mid next year or earlier if possible. But the main reason we want to go to the US is not the duties, because who knows how the duties will evolve. You can't build an investment case on duties. We want to be in the US because it's a major market for us. It's growing fast. We are shipping hundreds of containers with steel across the Atlantic. And anyway, with or without duties, you have currency risks. You have the transportation cost that goes up and down. The steel price can be very different. You want to have a natural hedge by producing where you have big markets. I think that's one of these universal truths in manufacturing that plays a big role. And for me, you want to have a flexible supply chain. You can't build plants everywhere. You have to sweat your assets. I think still some major truths are valid, even in today's world. You try to invest where your major markets are.
So
and that's a natural hedge.
It was initially already planned.
Yes.
But let's say that
it gave some extra push.
Was a catalyst to force
my boss is a bit
the
more
launch
impatient
and the rollout of it. Do you have clients that you effectively advise or ask and say, what do we have to do? Do we have to go follow the leader?
Of course we do, because it's a question that is going on. And with the tariffs now, like you said, every week it's a tariff on, a tariff off. It's softened, it's strengthened. So nobody knows what is going on. There are a few things. On one hand, the world doesn't end in a year, 2 years. So after 4 years or 3.5 years, the situation might be different. You don't know. the situation might be different, but in any case, everybody is operating in what is a reality today. What I do think and what I do see with a lot of customers is that there is an accelerated investment in automation, digitalization, in any case just to increase profitability or at least keep profitability on the same level that there is today. But there are also opportunities there because with every setback or potential setback, there are always opportunities to seize in the market.
Okay.
Carl, if I may, I just want to add one thing. We have certain states in US who offer you the ground, who offer you the building for free. You just need a good business plan and you need to engage yourself to have quite a lot of labor. So you say I make a business plan and I will attract a certain number of people. If you stick to the plan, you can keep the ground and the building in US. It's quite different from here, where you need to write 1,000 pages to keep your own business.
But that's a strategy like a developing country that they are offering you.
It's the reality today.
It's the reality today, okay. All right, that's quite an awakening. Now, finally, we are all here not only to hear what the problems and the uncertainties are, of course, we have to talk about if there is an illness or a threat, you have to talk about a remedy, and you also have to think about your own strengths. It's a part of the story, of course. As Yogi Bear, maybe you know him, you don't know him, there was the bear in the Jungle Book. He always said, and people remember that, especially in America, Yogi Bear said, making predictions is so hard, especially if it is about the future. Huh? Some people know it. So many experts and European politicians proclaim that we should be focusing on our strengths, just as you do, and opportunities, rather than weaknesses and threats. When we make the SWOT, the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats analysis of Europe. Now, that's what I want to hear from you, fantastic five, as spontaneously as you want to give you a few leads of what is stated. Europe is known for, if you put it into ChatGPT and you say, what are the strengths of Europe? Why not? Europe is known for good craftsmanship, skilled workers, strong R&D ecosystems, a large, unified and well-regulated market, a competitive edge in sustainable manufacturing. It's a pro and a con, sustainable manufacturing, and a stable political agenda. I would not be so sure about that, but furthermore, now that Germany says, whatever it takes, especially on defense, and Mrs. von der Leyen is all about the Green Deal. Are we in the right side of the corner for a Europe that is really open for business finally? Where do you think we are now at the moment? Where are we heading in these 6 coming months? Any 2 cents?
2 cents from my side is I think businesses are open, businesses in Europe are open for business. I think from a regulator, a governmental, a policymaker perspective, they need to, well, it's already 5 minutes past 12 o'clock. I mean, we got the new Green Deal from von der Leyen, I get the Antwerp Declaration, and now you got the new Green Deal. It was actually received lukewarm by most companies. They say, well, great ideas, great intentions, but you gave the example, mid-28, but they need it now, because competition is happening now. And in mid-28 or whatever, competition will also have evolved. So there is really an urgency to act really fast. They cannot wait a year and a half. Let's do it fast, because businesses are open to do business in Europe.
You can get now in the US your ground and your factory?
Building.
Yeah,
Well, not just the US, by the way.
Yeah.
You gave that example. The north of France is hunting for companies as well.
Of course.
Belgian
Many
companies.
countries are really open for it. But I think, to pick up on your question, they told me there are 4 levels for change management. You need a level of urgency. I think we have a level of urgency, that's for sure. You need to have vision. What I cherish always when I see CEOs and I see managing directors of manufacturing companies, they already have a plan, they already launched a plan. So there is a vision about the how. But then you need governance and what's in for me. And what's in for me as a financing things where we have an issue. We cannot today repatriate all the assets because in Belgium we have, I think, 1,400 billion of financial assets somewhere under our control, out of which a majority is in the US, not in Europe. And the governments will lack governance on the infrastructure, and I think to be transparent, it's governments, and not only Belgium, it's also EU governance, so that we can make it happen. So I'm a positivist because I have 4 children, I have no choice. So I think that as you see the dynamics, as you see that we see opportunity and risk, now we're on the move, we need to have our governance on the move, and it's looked like it is. But I'm 50 years old, so I've lived many crises, and there's been so many cases I thought, now EU is about to move. So I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months, but I will tell you, if governments are moving, then you have all the ingredients of the recipe for a very bright future because of all of this. Because if they see that there is a business case, then we can repatriate the assets and we can repatriate and facilitate the financing, but it's all dependent on the governance.
But is
I,
it
I
not,
would add one more ingredient if I can, and that is a globalized or a unified capital markets in Europe.
But you have legislation and you have what you tell, because you're a company and you're heading much faster than legislation and regularization. Don't you have the scenario that companies will move faster than the European deregulation?
I tend to think, and I will be very cautious because Marc is a real lawyer, so he knows law better than me. But I would say that I'm thinking that in times of war, you have the possibility to have faster decision process even in the legal system. So today we have in this country a new Minister of Defense. And actually he doesn't like the previous one, but they apply the same industrial policy. And both of them, they were listening when we said you could procure faster. He can spend 10 billion, cool, but if it takes 2 years, he will not spend even 1 billion. So there are processes even in the legal system that these kind of exceptional circumstances you could apply. So I think it's more about the intent, and then you turn it and you use a legal system that's saying, I have a constraint, it's too easy. And I think that we're seeing people on the move. I see that in Belgium we can be proud of what we have now as governments because it's looked like they're on the move.
The sense of
yes,
of urgency.
The sense of urgency. There's a vision. There's a vision. And there's a governance.
Yeah.
So I think that EU now, EU funding, you said that companies do not even apply to get EU funding. That's true. In the industry in Belgium, I don't know a lot of them applying for this. It's just too long. It just does not make sense. And so that's why I think we have everything it takes. But now we need to see the level of urgency and use the right legal tools to make it happen. For me, a legal constraint, I take the liberty to think it's something which is manageable. But I don't know if it's legally valid. I'm no longer a lawyer for 20 years, so it's okay.
Maybe, Carl, if I can just support Stéphane, I think we will invest a lot in defense, which we need to do. But it is not by buying all American full military systems that the added value will return to the people in the audience. Today, the lead times of anti-Patriot rocket systems is 7 years. If you order today, you get it in 7 years. So the guys have a big supply chain problem. So at least our ministers, they want to spend 2% to 3%, whatever. They should at least motivate the big players to say, please, check your supply chain. If these nice factories all here present today with a lot of technology, a lot of competence, can assist to bring the lead time down. And this they can put in the tender book today. They can say, I want 40% added value from Belgium, Flanders, Wallonie, I don't care. But they should have a certain return. Today we are investigating in our foundries if we can cast obus. If we can cast obus, we have the question to make obus. Why not? But I think we need to spend a lot of money on defense sector, but it's full systems they want to buy, or they want to repeat orders which are already running. They want to buy more F-35s, they want to buy more ships, that is because they want to spend the money fast. I can understand, but they should also try to integrate the local industry to say what can we assist to bring the lead times down, to be much more quick, because in 7 years a lot can happen.
In 7 years, a lot of things can happen. Maybe one. Sorry.
Yeah, if 2 cents for me, I'm happy to give 2 cents.
Okay. I have a question for you, or for you both, for everybody of you. they always are so proud of. You are the reason because I am asking this question, Tim. You're so proud of Belgian productivity. I think you said to me in our Teams call that the productivity in your facilities in Belgium were better than in the US? Or
You have a lot of calculations about productivity. I think next Monday the productivity will not be so good. But okay, that's another topic. I think yes, still we have people who want to work hard. We want to make our people proud about the product. If people are proud, then they are motivated. Then they will manage the quality. Then they will be happy to see a customer. So I think we need to make our people proud, show the end product, show the added value they generate. We need CNC people. We need welders. I'm sorry, lawyers, I'm happy we have two very good lawyers in the panel today, but we have a lot of psychologists studying every year. But we need workers. We need to valorize the blue collars. We pay too much to the white collars. We pay not enough to the blue collars. We should give a company car to the blue collars and not to the white collars. We have too much white collars writing emails from left to right and responding all day, sitting mails. That's no added value. We want CNC operators to operate these nice machines that you see in the hall.
That's quite a remarkable quote. People who work on these machines are the people who should get the company cars. I'm very sorry for everybody, but yeah, there's a sense of truth in it. Now, because I think we're duly over time, we're going to the final thoughts. We're a little bit at the end of this debate with the 5 fantastic guys. I would like just to round up with everybody and maybe starting with the professor. I would like to give you, as you introduced yourself in 30 seconds, I would like to have your 30 seconds takeaway for the public. Speak to the public and say what you have to say in 30 seconds, and that's for everybody.
Well, obviously for people who are in business, is the only advice is keep pushing forward, and at the end of the day, excellence will stand out, and don't calculate too much on all these factors because they're unpredictable anyway, but you have to be strategic. But I want to say one thing that hasn't been said. If you say, well, how do we accelerate things here? I think what we need is a coming together of the business side that is strategic now and the financial sector. With the government as the intermediator to create large-scale investment fast. That's what we need to do. That's the only way to generate money. We don't have public money, and the EU doesn't have money either. That's why it's so complicated to apply for the money. They don't have money. So that's what we need to do in Belgium. We have agency here. We have a poor government but very rich population, and we need to if we can tie that together and do strategic investment very quickly. And that's what we will try to do with defense, obviously. That's on the cards. And you could do that for a number of these things.
I can only second that.
Right, my 30 seconds is, I think we will manage in the end because we've always managed. I mean, if you look at the skilled resources, labor resources that we have here, R&D capabilities, our ACT mentality that can do. So I think we will manage. In general, as a suggestion, I would say don't wait. Take matters into your own hand. Review your business. Do scenarios. Stress test those scenarios. But I think the best piece of advice is don't panic. Act, but don't panic.
Act, do it now. Do not panic. Stéphane.
Yeah, I would have 2 cents. One sense would be, I would say, the emotional one, and the one rational. I visited probably 120 countries in the world. There are about 200. Europe is the coolest place on earth. So it's worth defending it. And it's worth defending the new intellectual. We are the craftsmanship guys. That's the why. The second one is the how. We in business, we keep adapting. And we in Europe, we are lucky that we have very strong strengths. So let's keep faith. They said, sorry, I know the word in French, Le 21e siècle sera spirituel ou ne sera pas. Let's keep faith in ourselves and fight for it. We have everything it takes. Let's not panic.
Yeah, from my side, I'll add, compliment my colleagues. Let's build on our strengths. I think as a manufacturing sector, Europe is really strong. I've also lived in China. I traveled a lot, and I think we should really not underestimate our strengths. Sometimes we are too humble, certainly in Flanders, also in Belgium. Let's be proud. Let's not be naive, and keep common sense. I come from a farmer's family. Boerenverstand in Dutch. Common sense, I think, will bring us into the future, whatever future that may be.
Thank you for the wise words, Tim.
My advice would be listen to your customer. Your customer also is in trouble maybe. He will guide you. Listen carefully. Maybe you can build extra business. It will create opportunities. I like the simplicity that was said. And also don't underestimate the human relations. We as Belgians, we are not too offensive in Germany, not offensive in France. They will invest a lot in defense sector. They will invest a lot in nuclear. There will be plenty of opportunities for Belgian suppliers who speak French, German, English and Flemish. So we have this flexibility, we have this pragmatism. So let's use it and do more business than before.
Those were 5 fantastic guys, to stay in the terms of Stow. You rock, guys.
Yeah.
You rock. We would not only like to thank you for your valuable insights. I'd like to give you personally, and hopefully also the people, give you a tremendous applause before we start this networking drink.